All right, guys, so we're doing a solo pod today. We're going to be doing them for every now and again. We haven't got a guest on. These are basically just going to cover things like a news article that I've seen during the week or some reports that get sent in. We've got a couple questions from people that got sent in too that I want to go over. But I got sent a report, and I'm just going to basically put my 2 cents in. I saw a report from last week. It was the 28th of April, and it came from the AIHW, which is the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare, which is basically titled Reducing the Burden Due to Overweight, Including Obesity, which I don't know why they put that in brackets, and Physical Inactivity. So basically, I'll give you a quick summary, and then I'll give you my 2 cents and see what you think. Every year in Australia, millions of years of healthy life are lost because of injury, illness, premature deaths in the population. This loss is called the burden of disease. So it doesn't cover everything. It just basically under the brackets of burden of disease. In 2018, more than 1/3, 38% of disease burden could have been prevented by reducing exposure to risk factors such as tobacco use, overweight, again in brackets including obesity, alcohol use, and physical inactivity. These and other lifestyle-related risk factors are major contributors to chronic conditions such as coronary heart disease, dementia, type 2 diabetes, and cancer. So the AIHW analysis looked at 2 risk factors for disease, overweight, again in brackets, I don't know why, including obesity. I guess when you look at someone who's obese versus someone who's being overweight, someone who's being overweight in their broad scale could be you are 5 kilos overweight, which is someone who's obese, obviously far more. You're looking at 5 kilos versus potentially 50. So to see what could happen if Australians reduce their body mass index, BMI. Now, the BMI is a very outdated tool. I was a trainer for 7 years and I never used it. I think it needs to be either scrapped or updated. A lot of people, including myself, would be obese or overweight using the scale because it basically goes off your height versus weight. So someone from me who's like 175 centimeters and roughly 80 kilos, you're overweight. It doesn't take into account muscle mass, resting heart rate, how fit you actually are. Doesn't take any of that, just height versus weight. I know plenty of bodybuilders who would be morbidly obese. I know plenty of athletes who would be morbidly obese. It's very generic, and a lot of people go off it and think, oh, morbidly obese, and it's very generic. So that, again, needs to be scrapped or updated. So using the body mass index or more physically active between 2018 and 2030. So they're basically going to be doing a report from 2017 to 2018, saying where we were, and they want to do a report from 2018 to 2030 to show us where they want us to be. So, where were we? So Australians reduced their body mass index, BMI, or were more physically active between 2018 and 2030. In 2018, overweight, including obesity and physical inactivity, jointly accounted for 8.7% of the total burden in Australia, which means deaths. Greater than tobacco, which was 8.6%. So pretty much people who died of being overweight or obese, I'm probably leaning towards more being obese. More people died of being obese than tobacco, which you can argue tobacco healthy, not healthy. I know people who drink and smoke and live to 90 plus. So you do have some genetic outliers who beat the system and live very high, and they treat their body like a theme park. And you have people who drop dead at 30, 40, 50 and are quite fit. I had a boss who was pretty much one of the fittest guys I knew at the time, and he was out for a bike ride and heart attack. So you just never know. Greater than tobacco, which is one of the leading risk factors for disease burden in Australia in 2018. The year 2030 was chosen as it aligns with the National Preventative Health Strategy 2021 to 2030. So they're going to be doing a 10-year strategy plan which seeks to achieve improved health outcomes over the decade and is complemented by the National Obesity Strategy 2022 to 2032. So our status, Australia's status, in 2017 to 2018, 2 in 3, so 67% of adults, and 1 in 4, 25% of children were overweight or obese, which is, again, they're putting in brackets obese, so it doesn't tell you exactly whether you're overweight or obese. If they said it was obese, that's a lot easier to go off. It's a lot more scarier because if 2 in 3 people were obese, which I don't think is the case, we're obviously getting a lot bigger as a nation, but I don't think we're 2 in 3 just yet. And I definitely don't think kids are 1 in 4. But I think it's definitely getting higher, but I don't think it's 1 in 4. So again, you could be a couple kilos overweight, or you could be 30, 40, 50 plus. It doesn't specify just yet. From 1995 to 2017 to 2018, trends over the time have shown an overall increase in people living with overweight, again, including obesity, which is pretty evident, I think. Among adults, the prevalence of those living with overweight, in brackets, including obesity, increased from 57% in 1995 to 67% in 2017 to 2018. So it's gone up. It's gone up 12% in 22 years. Again, that's pretty evident. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think people can tell that we're a lot more inactive and more overweight. I think that's pretty easy to see. An increase again, 1 in 5. So the prevalence of obesity among adults similarly increased from 1 in 5, which was in 1995, to 1 in 3, which is what we're at now. So just over 31%, which, again, if it specified the overweight versus obese, it'd be a lot more easier to talk about. But because, again, you could be a couple kilos overweight versus morbidly obese, potentially on your deathbed. So it doesn't specify. The latest guidelines refer to the insufficient activity to describe minimum levels of activity required for health benefits. The Department 201A trends in insufficient physical activity among adults have shown a slight decrease from 69% in 2007-2008 to 65% in 2017 to 2018. So they're saying we've gone down, we've dropped 4% of activity among adults, which I thought it'd be more, to be fair. I think it'll be probably more so now from 2018 to say, I guess if they did it, I guess you can't really use COVID because nobody was allowed out of the house. So the scenarios in 2030. Sorry, I'm not looking at the camera, guys. I'm trying to read and look back. The analysis examined the following scenarios. So a stable scenario in 2030, the prevalence of overweight, including obesity, and physical activity in the population stays at the levels of 2017 to 2018. So they want it to stay roughly where it was and obviously not increase. That's what they want. Or it would be better if it dropped, which would be ideal. A target scenario, which I think that's what we're talking about now, people at increased risk of disease associated with living with overweight or obesity and physical inactivity in 2018 reduce their BMI, which I would say scrap that. So reduce their BMI or increase the level of physical activity respectively and maintain this to 2030, which I think that's a better reason to do it. Obviously, me being a trainer, I've trained a lot of overweight people, I've trained obese people, and obviously increasing your activity is going to help tremendously, but also you need to look at what your intake is. And it's very, very simple. It doesn't need to be overcomplicated. Your output needs to be more than your intake. It's very straightforward stuff. It doesn't need to be complicated. Like I said, I was a trainer for more than 7 years and I never heard an excuse that I thought was relative or acceptable for someone being overweight or obese. I don't have time. It's expensive. I don't know. I don't know is probably the only one that I could kind of cop, but there's so much information out there and it's very simple. If you know, what do you think's healthier? Drive-through or cooking a meal? KFC versus a chicken and veggies, chicken and salad. You know, it's just use your eyes. You can tell what's better for you and what's not. Now, I've never been the one who's like, no, you need to eat chicken rice, and sure, that works, but you're just not going to stick to it. So I've been quite blunt when I was a trainer, and my approach to weight loss, fat loss, all that kind of thing. And you just need to be consistent. You need to listen, and you just need to keep it simple. It's not hard. Find foods you like, find things that work for you, find foods that digest well, because that's important. People don't worry about that. They'll just shove anything in, try and eat low calorie foods so they can get some more volume, which works, but it doesn't work. It might work to quench your thirst, to scratch an itch, but if you're eating foods that, you know, add more volume to your diet, but mess up your digestion, and you're clogged up and you're backed up and your stomach's a mess and you're bloated, you look like shit anyway. So it doesn't really work. And again, there's plenty of information out there, but it can be quite overwhelming if you don't know what information to look for. So I guess if you're in a position to hire a coach, great. And yeah, sure, they are expensive, but you also get what you're paying for, and you need to do your research to find a good one. You know, because there's plenty of coaches out there that are just pretenders. You need to find, I guess, one of the easy ways for me, I guess I was looking for a coach. You find a coach or coaches that have a lot of clients, and then if you really want to go in depth, look through their clients' socials and see how much they talk about their coaches. So, you know, a coach is only as good as their clients. So if their clients are talking and raving about them, then they're a strong lead. I live on the Gold Coast. There's plenty of good coaches here. I mean, just off the top of my head, you know, you can just go through Instagram and find plenty. But, you know, for me, off the top of my head would be, you know, an Emily King, Matt O'Reilly. They've got probably a decade between them in terms of knowledge and experience. They've got pre and postpartum coaches on staff with them. You go through the website, they've got everything you need. It's $50, I think, to start. I think, and I'm not coached by them. This isn't like a plug or anything. I think it's around, most coaches are around 50 a week. I had one who was like just under 70 a week just for training. They can get expensive. You can be looking at more than 100 a week, which, you know, if you can afford it, great. If not, you know, work your way down. If you can't afford a coach, then I think you can get a gym from $10 to $20 a week. And, you know, if you're someone who's not comfortable going on a gym floor, jump in the classes. You can go unlimited classes. Most gyms now have classes, just a tool to use. So you're not just, oh, I'm not going to go to the gym because I don't know what to do. That's an excuse. It's a cop-out at the end of the day. I know it's a little bit daunting at first, but it's going to be more daunting when that 5 kilos is now 10, and then it's 20. And now you need to go and buy bigger clothes, and there's only certain stores you can go to, and you just don't leave the house because you don't feel comfortable. It's a snowball effect. So, like I said, if you can afford a coach, great. If not, there's tons of information out there that you can get online, but just do your due diligence, because there's a lot of good stuff out there and there's a lot of shit out there. So you can find a lot of good stuff out there and find a common thread. You're all good. So back to this one. So the trend scenario, which is basically saying where we're going to be based off of this. And put a side note too, I personally know you can go through most gyms and you can go to someone like I had him on the podcast last, a Christian Wall, and he has competitors. He's got a lot of female clients, male clients. He's got a very no BS approach, which I think is the best to do it. I think there are a lot of enablers out there when it comes to coaching. You know, you can say things like, oh, you're doing the best you can. Well, you're not, because you wouldn't be in the situation that you are in now. You know, you're doing the best at eating too much shit, eating not the right things. Oh, I don't have time. Well, you've had enough time to eat the wrong things. You've had enough time to not do anything. You've had enough time to just lay about. And, you know, I guess the cliche thing would be, oh, there's 24 hours in a day. Yeah, there is. 24 hours in a day is a lot. I know, you know, you can look back and go, oh, today's flown. But you've still got the same 24 hours as the other person. If you start work at 5 a.m., I'm not going to tell you to do it before a.m. because I would never do that. But say you do your typical 8-hour day, start at 5, finish at 1, do it afterwards. There's an hour there somewhere. You do 9 to 5, do it beforehand, do it afterwards. I'm a morning person. On the days I don't work, it's straight away in the morning. But on the days I do, it's got to be done straight after, because my battery just goes down real quick. You just got to make it a priority. So back to this. So the trend scenario for overweight, including obesity, I don't know why they keep putting that in brackets. Current trends in exposure were extended to 2030. However, limited data was available to inform the same trend for physical activity, obviously because we're not at 2030 yet. So the modelling applied the methods used in the Australian Burden of Disease, the ABDS 2018. So the analysis also found that the most effective interventions for achieving greater improvements to disease burden in 2030 would be those targeted higher levels of BMI. So for me, if you're going to do the BMI, it's more of a visual thing. You can look at someone and tell if they're overweight. You can look at someone and say, well, you can tell that they're obese, rather than just, if I handed you a piece of paper and said, my name's Shane, I'm 175 centimeters tall and I'm 80 kilos. That's all you've got to go off. But if I sent you a picture of me and you saw I'm 175 centimeters tall and 80 kilos, you can see, okay, he's got X amount of muscle on, lean. You can see what I'm looking like, versus someone who's 165 centimeters tall and 100 kilos, 110 kilos, and barely an ounce of muscle on them, and they're just pure fat. That's the crowd you need to work on. So the high levels of BMI, that is the obese population. And those increasing activity among older people, these are the groups that experience larger disease burden overall. So obviously as you get older, things hurt more, you can't do as much, but you just find things that work, you find things that don't hurt. So my approach is quite blunt. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean it's wrong. My body, from just years of gridiron, grappling, boxing, my knees are shot to shit. Again, it's probably not from looking after them as well as I should have, but I'll still go for runs. Went for a 20K run today. My knees are shot. Still get up and go for it. Still got to do it. And you've also got to realize too, with the output versus input. So say roughly I burnt, say, anywhere from 2,000 calories to 2,500 calories for my 21K run today, which is pretty easy to think about. I can easily out-eat 2,000 calories. I can easily out-eat 2,500 calories. That's basically what I eat standard today. So all I've got to do is eat my food today, and then I'm back to normal. But you can just go through Macca's and it's done. On top of what you're eating every day, you can just go through any sort of fast food, and what you think you've done, it's like, oh, I've just been to the gym, I can go and do that. It's like, not really. You need to be, the thing is, we talk about balance. You need to be in a position to have earned balance. You can't just be someone who's overweight or obese and go, I've trained, I've been really good this week, I'm gonna have a day off. It's like, no, you need to be in a position to have a day off. Because trust me, when you're in a position to have a day off, you're gonna feel so much better. It's just, you need to spend 3, 6, 12 months suffering. And I don't mean it's got chicken and rice, that kind of thing, but you need to bust your ass for those 3, 6, 9, 12 months to having earned that little bit of flexibility. You need to be consistent. You need to just be disciplined. Too many people join a gym and then just go, oh, I'm just flexible with my diet because I go to the gym. Earn those things. Earn the flexibility. It's too easy to just start up a gym. Say I was 20, 30 kilos overweight. I'm not going to join a gym and just on day one go, oh, okay, it's day one, I've trained today, I'm going to go and have an ice cream. Or I've trained 5 days this week, I'm going to go do that. Because it's very easy to just shit those 5 days of hard work away. Like I said, I can train for, say an average gym session of weights, you can burn anywhere from 300 to 500 calories. If you're just doing strength stuff. I'm not talking cardio or, classes or any sort of CrossFit thing. If you're just doing your strength training. 300 to 500 calories is very easy. Again, that's a burger. That's a thick shake. That's a couple cookies. You've just got to be smart about it. Again, do your research, get a coach. There's plenty of things that you can just, once you start to dig a bit deeper, you actually want to learn more, because then you put yourself in a better position. So we're moving that away now. I saw one of my best mates has had his first child, and for whatever reason, my mind went to work, oh, whatever happens if anything happens with them? Obviously, they're not going to be. But I was like, what happens with child support? How does it all work? I was raised by a single mother. I never knew how it all worked. But I got thinking, I was listening to a conversation about universal basic income and the pros and cons. And then I was like, well, is there such thing as, or could there be such thing as universal basic child support? And I was looking through our system. This is obviously just Australia's system. And at the moment, you've got like the fixed rate for a child support period starting just after the 1st of January 2023. So this year, it's already started. So the fixed rate is $1,632 per child per year, which I thought it was something that I guess it might be different. It could be based off your income, etc. If you pay the fixed rate for more than 3 children, they'll cap the amount at 3 times the fixed rate, which is just under $5,000 for the 3 kids for the year, which is less than $100 a week, which when you say it like that, it depends. It's hard. If you pay the fixed rate to more than one person, obviously they would divide the amount between those receiving parents, i.e. if you've got multiple children to multiple parents, you'd obviously split that amount. But do you think the system needs an overhaul? I know from myself, being raised by a single mum with, I would say, little to next to no help from my dad. I haven't seen my dad in close to 20 years. So, I think he paid next to nothing or very little. Again, saying all that, I turned out fairly okay. So would that help? Made a difference? I don't know. Do you think there needs to be an increase in the amounts? Do you think there needs to be a higher cap? Let me know what you think. I was also watching the news with the Jared Haynes situation last week about how he's pretty much going to be in jail for quite some time. And it looks like he's guilty. But a mate of mine and I were talking about, do you think there should be, because it's always a he said, she said situation, you don't know until you find out in court. But it got me thinking, should there be, if it was proven that he wasn't guilty and he was innocent, but still had to go through this whole process because of an accusation, should there be false allegations law? So I looked into it, and there are to a certain degree. So the false accusations can be punished with a prison sentence of up to 2 years if heard in your local court, or up to 7 years if heard in the district court. But they've also said these penalties are reserved for the worst kind of offences and are unlikely to be what you would receive, meaning they're probably going to be less than the 2 and 7 years. So I looked at, some horrible crimes. So things like rape, which is considered a very serious offence, and it carries a maximum sentence of life imprisonment, and a serious assault is 7 years imprisonment. So I was looking at that and going, okay, so a rape charge can give me a life sentence, or if it was a false accusation, it can be anywhere from 2 to 7 years, which again, it's probably going to be less. So, and there are plenty of people who are in jail for things they didn't commit. Obviously, it's found later down the road, which, you could spend 5, 10, 20 years in prison and then it's found out you didn't do it, or you could never be found innocent. So I was like, well, does that need an overhaul? If there's a crime that you could possibly receive a life sentence for, but the accusation, which if it was deemed false, you're looking at anywhere from 2 to 7 years. Does that seem enough? Should there be a system where it's like, okay, if I'm looking at life, you need to be looking at half of that if you're going to accuse me of that crime? Or is that too harsh? Should it be, okay, if you falsely accuse someone, the first times is, say, 3 years, second time's 5 years, third time's 10 years, does it go up? Should there be a change in the system? Let me know what you think. And I put out a report earlier last week. It was about a United Nations report about the idea or the conversation of changing the legal consent law, the legal age of consent. So if you look at right now, Angola and the Philippines, they have both set their age of consent at 12. So, that's pretty low to most. Well, that's the lowest, considering most places are, 16, 17, 18, more. So I'll just give you a brief summary of the report. So the United Nations put out a report from the International Committee of Jurists on Wednesday. The report did not call for the abolishment of the minimum age consent. So just know it didn't call for it. They're just having a conversation. But the idea that they're having a conversation about it conversations generally lead to further things. You know, you can look back at COVID and we were having conversations about things and having conversations about vaccines and having conversations about isolation, and then 2 years later we know what happened. So if we're having a conversation about something, it could generally lead to the insane thought of the minimum age being brought down. But they do speak about why they're thinking it. But ask the law enforcement to take into account, so this is where they were trying to explain it. So they asked law enforcement to take into account the opinions, testimonies of the adolescents in question, rather than just applying the law blindly. So this is a little bit weird. So they want to take into account the opinions and testimonies of the children in the situation. So say you've got a 10-year-old who is in love with a 20-year-old or a 30-year-old. They want to take that 10-year-old's opinions and thoughts into consideration when we know how easily children are led. You know, you can just look at the example of mum and dad trying to get their kid ready to go to school. Mom, I don't want to go to school today. No, you've got to. Then dad's like, well, we'll take you out for ice cream if you go to school. All right, I want to go. Boom, that's simple. It's that simple to change a kid's mind and get him to do something or her something that he or she doesn't want to do. So there, again, it goes back to the idea of there's a conversation that could lead to something a lot more insane. In this 2013 study, a young adolescent sexual activity, the Guttmacher Institute noted that by the time they turn 16, about a third of adolescents have already had sex. Some places in the world are just like that. Again, it's not right, it's not wrong, it is what it is. Increasing to nearly half, so just over 48% by the 17 years of age, and 61% when they turn 18. So almost 2/3 of kids have had sex by the time they turn 18. The minimum age of consent laws are not adjusted accordingly. These adolescents may be criminally penalized, throwing their lives and future into jeopardy. So this is what I was saying. They're trying to explain the reasons why they want to have this conversation. But I don't think this is purely the only reason. So if they change the minimum consent laws, so they're worried that these kids who are already underage having sex, that technically they're breaking the law. So if you have, a 13-year-old boy and he's got a girlfriend and they're in love and they decide for whatever reason how they found out, I don't know, and they decide to have sex, one or both of them are breaking the law, that kid can go to jail. So that's the reason they're looking at changing the age of consent. But we all know there are crazy men and women out there that can see that and go, hang on a minute, I'm in love with you have 40, 50, 60-year-old man can be like, well, I'm in love with a 12-year-old. And then it's very easy, again, to warp a child's mind so they can be taken advantage of. So that's where the conversation, to me, is wild, that they're even having a conversation about it. The report only states that underage sexual conduct may be consensual. The report never mentioned sex between adults and children. It never mentioned it, but again, it goes back to the conversation that the idea that they're having a conversation about it, it has to have been a thought, and there has to be the thought of ramifications from changing that. So they're saying they want to have a conversation about changing the laws of consent and dropping the age because there are heaps of young kids already having sex, and those kids are technically breaking the law, but the ramifications of that will undoubtedly be you will have these predators out there that see that and go, well, they're going to take my opinion and my thoughts into account now. They're also going to take into the thoughts and opinions of the child that I can easily manipulate into account as well. So it's an insane thought that it's even happening. Let me know what you think. So we've got a couple more. So this was earlier on in the week, probably late last week. An Australian man faces potential jail time for allegedly spitting at Imam, which is a mosque in Indonesia. There's plenty of footage of it too. He definitely did it. Brenton Craig Abbas Abdullah MacArthur, 47, say that 3 times quick, was arrested at Sukarno Hatta International Airport before he boarded a flight back to Australia on Friday. So he's already back here. Hours after the incident at Jamai-i Muhajir Mosque in West Java. The 47-year-old is charged with Articles 335 and 315 of the Criminal Code, which regulate unpleasant acts and insults. So pretty much, you know, there's places in Asia, China, and Hong Kong, and all those other places where you're not even allowed chewing gum. So you sure as shit are not going to be allowed to spit in a mosque at an imam, which, yeah, that's pretty stupid. I mean, the fact that he's already home now, but in Australia, you're pretty lucky. So he could be facing a maximum sentence of 14 months in prison. I don't know if that's here or over there. Obviously, you'd rather do it here than over there. There's no way I'd want to do it over there. The CCTV footage, which has since gone viral, shows a man wearing a baseball cap entering the mosque and talking to the imam, which is, I guess, I'm assuming a version of a priest, before appearing to spit in his face. If you watch the footage, you can see it. The imam flees as the man casually walks away. So his thought process was he was drunk, on drugs, whatever. Apparently he felt like he was possessed and doesn't remember anything. So Imam Muhammad Basri Anwar, these names, 24, was reciting verses of the religious text using a mobile phone and a loudspeaker when the alleged incident took place. Now, I'm going to gloss over the rest of the article because it's basically a longer version of what I've said. It just goes into a bit more in detail of what the CCTV footage shows. The process that Brenton's potentially looking at, but under Islamic law, the consumption and sale of alcohol is banned. So the fact that he's either found something to drink or had drugs, brought drugs in, he's already in shit. With the 23-year-old now facing the prospect of spending time in an Indonesian jail. So obviously the crime happened over there, they're more than likely going to try and get him extradited over there. He could also be subject to 40 lashes with a cane, as this is a regular punishment for such offences. So, I mean, me personally, I'd take the lashes and the 14 months in prison. But that thought brings me to the question of, we haven't had capital punishment in this country for quite some time. And there's, you know, the two different thoughts. Was it a good thing? Was it a bad thing? It's up to you. Do you think it's something that could be or should be brought back? Maybe it could be brought back for specific crimes, or should it just be left away in the box? The last time Australia used capital punishment was in Victoria, the 3rd of February, 1967, which was Ronald Ryan, and he was hung for the crime of murder. I had a look at a bunch of these, and it was hanging. It wasn't, you know, there was only a couple that got, shot. He was hung for the crime of murder, so it wasn't really that long ago that we're doing it. Just over 50 years ago, the last hanging happened. So, you know, most people's parents were around that kind of time. So, again, do you think it should be something that could be brought back? Again, for certain crimes, capital punishment. My thought process, and again, my mind goes to weird places. I was like, well, maybe for certain crimes, is it something that, you know, maybe for theft, to scare off other thieves, do we bring back capital punishment of this kind of thing, like the cane? Do you bring back a harsher capital punishment for really heinous and horrible crimes like these, you know, these child predators or etc.? You know, I don't know. You know, let me know what you think. Or should it just be the system it is? You do a crime, you go to jail, juvie, pay a fine, back on the streets. Let me know what you think. Now, there were a few questions that got sent in. I'm just going to go over these fairly quickly. I won't take too long on these, but just for the next, if we do it, we'll do another solo one too. Send your questions in, either through Instagram, TikTok, Messenger, whatever. I'll go over as many as I can. So we've got one from Brittany. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years? So the 10-year one's a bit hard to answer, just because it's so long away. 5 years, I would say I would like, for me personally, I want this channel to hit the 1 million sub mark, this to be like a self-sustaining, money-making channel. But I want to have branches off from here, and this will be something that you'll see smaller portions of in the next 6 months. Things that I can do, giveaways, and, you know, give away cash and prizes and stuff like that to random people or less fortunate people. And you look at channels like, you know, before it got cancelled, like Steve will do it, and he's able to give money back or buy things for other people, and that's kind of what I would like to be able to do. So next 5 years, have that 1,000,000 subscribers, have a really strong, you know, consistent platform that I can use, not just for myself, but for other people. That also being said, branching off of that, obviously being able to have, you know, a couple properties would be good, a couple more dogs, travel. Those, I'm pretty simple when it comes to those kinds of things. I think the first one is to have that channel grown to that 1,000,000 sub plus mark. And then there's another business thing that I won't sort of go into too much, but the main thing is grow this channel to at least 1,000,000 subs in the next few years, and then be able to use that to help other people. That's the aim. Michael sent in a 3-pronged question. So, what is something you miss about high school? What was your favorite part? I'm assuming he's talking about high school, and also your biggest regret. I don't know if he's talking about life or high school. What is something you miss about high school? Probably I guess you're only able to look back on it now. So I guess how simple everything was. At the time you're probably thinking, oh, life sucks. I have to go to school, blah, blah, blah. You wake up, you go to school for 6 hours, come home, not a problem in the world. That was easy compared to now. So I guess I would probably take that over. I'd probably think of that. Obviously the friends you make and stuff like that now, but I'm not friends with anyone still from high school. I talk to a few people here and there, but the friends I had through high school aren't the friends that I have now. But I guess I miss the simplistic lifestyle that high school brought. What was my favorite part? I guess it's probably that again, the simplistic lifestyle that you have, the routine, sports, the friends you had. Like I said, I'm not friends with any of them now. Some, aren't even around. Some aren't even here now. But yeah, I guess it was just very simple back then. Your biggest regret? I guess I'll answer both in high school and in life. High school, genuinely knowing everything I know now, I would have probably left after grade 10, maybe 11. I don't think, for me personally, I never wanted to be a doctor, a surgeon, a lawyer or anything like that. I didn't need to have the OP1. So I think if I left earlier and just got a job that paid me well, didn't necessarily need to be something that had a future in it, just something that paid me well, that I could just focus on ways to make more money, start businesses, trading, learn about money, how to make it, how to keep it, how to grow it, how to make that money work for me. There'd be so much more, travel more. I would do everything that I'm trying to do now 10 years beforehand, you know what I mean? So I guess trying to have that time back, I would do that. Biggest life regret. Well, I won't use that one, but I guess that's something similar. My biggest life regret. My biggest life regret would probably be, there was a period of time where I would probably try and not people please, but I would say I would be more inclined to help people than I needed to. And I would put myself at a detriment to help other people, which bit me in the ass a few times. I would probably say I would be more selfish, funnily enough, because I'm quite selfish now. I probably should have been more selfish earlier on rather than being, but you learn. So I would say I would probably be a bit more selfish earlier on rather than helping the wrong people. I'd probably say helping the wrong people. But that's it for the questions. That's it for the show so far. Like I said, we'll be doing these every now and again, probably not every week, probably every second week or so. We've got 2 guests lined up. One's going to be a recurring guest. I don't think it'll be every week, but hopefully every second week, which will be, you'll like that one. And we're going to have our first female guest on next week. So yeah, this isn't like a woman-hating show. Some people, I've been tagging a couple things on TikTok, and it's not a I hate women show. Like I said, I was raised by a single mom. I love women. I have no hatred towards them whatsoever. So you will see an actual woman on the show for the first time. So that'll be fun. Also, like I said, I want to be able to grow the channel. So to do that, I have no idea how the algorithm works yet. Like the video, subscribe, share what you can, do what you can, because the more views, the more subs, obviously the more it grows, the more I can do with it. And the whole intention to do more with it is to be able to help people. Obviously, I'll be completely honest, not at the detriment of myself, because I feel like you do need to be always in a position to help people. And I feel like you give it all away, you can't help other people. So if I can help people as much as I physically can by growing this channel in any way, shape or form, that's the end goal. So like I said, like, share, subscribe, do whatever you can. That'd be great. Thanks, guys.